For some 40,000 years, the great island continent of Australia was inhabited by a race of people we know of today as Aborigines. When the British first landed on the continent in order to establish a colony in 1788, they found fragmented groups of the natives scattered throughout the vast island, speaking as many as 300 different languages. They also found a land whose landscape, much of which was uncompromisingly bleak and inhospitable from gradual changes wrought over millions of years, contained a strange but wonderful array of wildlife, much of which had never been seen before by anyone other than the native Aborigines. Europeans were immediately interested in this new land, its people, plant, and wildlife. As usual, this interest turned into desire to settle this wild land, to start all over, to make a new life in a new land that promised so much. Not surprisingly, the new settlers brought with them little pieces of their past. Maybe it was a subconscious way in which to remember their homeland across the ocean. Or maybe it was a totally conscious effort to mold the new and in many cases inhospitable area into that which they had grown up in and felt comfortable with. Nevertheless, the new explorers and settlers flooded onto the continent, bringing with them plant and wildlife species from their homelands. The new plant and wildlife species, though non-native to Australia, immediately took to the new land, forever changing its uniqueness. Some 200 years later, one can easily see the results of those first introductions and the many that have and continue to follow those who venture onto the great continent. The haphazard introductions of non-native species have resulted in huge numbers of animals, which the government must now deal with. Today, the continent is plagued with uncontrollable numbers of foxes, rabbits, horses, water buffaloes, donkeys, goats, and pigs, which roam wild throughout most of the continent. The pig, however, is considered the most serious of these animals. Their ability to explode in population, combined with their omnivorous feeding behavior, has resulted in few agricultural pursuits being unaffected. Estimates put the wild pig population at around 12 million. Damage to crops runs into the millions of dollars in many districts each year. The government has placed the animals on the Declared Animals Act, a government hit list of sort which forbids its introduction into the wild, declares the pig a non-native species which must be destroyed, and places restrictions on even keeping and or selling the animals except under prescribed conditions and restrictions. Though Australian sportsmen consider the pig one of their favorite game animals, they also view them as nothing more than pests with an open season. An open season with pleas from the government to totally eradicate the animal from the wild. Hunters throughout Australia consider the pig to be one of the most dangerous and exciting animals to hunt in the Outback. Back in 1990, we brought to you Wild Boars on Video, which took an extensive look at wild boar hunting in the United States. The video has been a huge success, with sales already throughout North America, Europe, the Mediterranean, and important to this tape, Australia. It was through one of our sales to Australia that the production of this video was conceived, after several exchanges of letters between Australian pig hunter Darren Shelley, who had ordered Wild Boars on Video, and myself. Darren's letters and accompanying photos described hunts where over 100 pigs were taken during their 4- and 5-day outings. At first I was skeptical of the claims, but after some research concerning wild pig populations in Australia, it became quite obvious that Darren's claims were very likely accurate descriptions of his weekend and holiday hunts. Darren and his party were more than willing to allow me to tag along as they pursued wild pigs in the outback of Australia, and kindly invited me to film their 1993 Easter holiday hunt, their longest and usually most successful. This time of year would also prove to be the most comfortable weather in which to visit for such an undertaking. The video you are about to see is a compilation of our own footage obtained after a month of extensive travel in Australia, as well as selected home video footage and photographs obtained from Darren and his hunting party, which they have shot over the last 2 years. Though we normally do not incorporate home footage into our productions, once we viewed Darren's video footage and his many photographs, we felt it would be a shame not to share them with you and allow you to get the real feel of an Australian wild pig hunt. Therefore, the video that follows will show you how Australian sportsmen hunt wild pigs in their country through the lens of not only our camera, but theirs, void of any professional hunters, guides, or setup kills. You'll see no actors, only hunters like yourself enjoying a holiday hunt. As an added feature, we'll then take you to the northeastern coast of Australia to the edge of their great tropical rainforest, where Jim Mitchell and Graham Hardwick of the Australian Department of Lands Protection Agency guide us into the huge herds of wild pigs that roam the tremendous Cape York Peninsula. We hope you enjoy not only the wild pig hunting, but the other information and footage throughout this production concerning Australia, its people, and varied wildlife. It's Australian wild pig hunting at its best. After some 20 hours of flight time, including a 14.5-hour non-stop flight from Los Angeles and an 8-hour drive over Australia's Great Dividing Range, I found myself in Australia's Great Outback, some 10,000 miles from our headquarters in Vidalia, Georgia. Our base camp for the next 5 days would be some shearers' quarters located on the huge sheep ranch where we would be hunting. The hunters who would make up the party for the extended Easter weekend hunt were Darren and Carl Shelley, our host, Stephen Riley, Darren's cousin and longtime hunting partner, Paul Hansen and his son Shay, and Bruce Melville. Though many in the group have been hunting since childhood, it was not till 1984 that the individuals began hunting wild pigs as a group and keeping accurate records of each and every kill, including the exact location and weapon used. Since keeping the records, the group has rolled some 2,000 of the animals. Though Carl did not join the outings till 1989, he has managed to put 100 kills on the books with his 270. Darren, using a 243 and stalking his prey on foot, has some 350 kills on record, while cousin Steve, who hunts from atop his dirt bike and on foot, has downed over 555 of the beast with a 30-30 lever action. Steve and Darren told me that Paul's numbers must run much higher considering he has hunted pigs since the early 70s, shooting from trucks when the populations were much higher than even present-day herds. They pointed out that back in the good old days, it was not unusual for one person to stack up 60 or 70 kills a day, whereas now the group's total may only run between 70 and 100 animals over an extended weekend hunt. It became quite obvious to me from the start that I was in the midst of a group of die-hard, well-experienced pig hunters that were going to show me how it's done Australian style. Before the hunt was over, I had no doubt these guys were going to heat some barrels up. Though the area remains arid most of the year, the occasional rains which sweep across the barren bush country are usually just enough to maintain green grasses necessary for the grazing sheep and other livestock. Any heavy downpour, however, can quickly turn the dusty dirt roads into impassable messes of slimy mud. I arrived under different circumstances, however, for the area was in the midst of one of the worst droughts it has experienced in years, leaving the ground dry, dusty, and void of any green grasses. It was the Outback I had heard so much about. Our first 2 days of hunting resulted in long hours of walking and sore feet, with nothing to show for it. Cole summed up the situation after our first day of hunting.
On Tipperary now for 2 full hunting sessions, which is probably 3.5, 4 hours per session, and we're not having a great deal of success. But when you see the way the state the country's in here, there's no wonder really. It's in the grip of drought, and there's just no food here to keep the pigs here. My suggestion is that they've moved into cover somewhere where there is still a bit of grass available for food. There's just none here. It's bare dirt, as you can see. So we've just got to keep on looking and trying different areas until such time as we come across that type of country. There's got to be grass and cover on the ground, and then we'll find the pigs that are here. Silly as it sounds, when I say it's in the grip of drought, there is quite a bit of water on the ground. There's puddles of water. They had rain here 3 weeks ago, had 1.5 inches of rain, which is quite good. But it hasn't brought any growth through, and as fast as the growth is coming through, the sheep and cattle that were in the grip of the drought are eating it off as fast as it comes through. So it's not actually improving. It really needs more rain to get it up to scratch. But we're just going to have to hunt harder, further, and try different areas until such time as we come across these pigs. And we will. The boys on the bikes will split up and scatter all over the place till they find dams with signs on where the pigs are, or find that elusive grass and feed that they'll be on. There's nothing sure. That's what's going to happen.
While I tagged along with Darren and Cole as they walked their area on foot, the others took off each morning before daybreak on their dirt bikes. Though I attempted one afternoon to tag along with the bikers on a four-wheeler, the action was much too fast, leaving me sitting in clouds of dust as they raced off through the brush in search of pigs. All I could do was sit and listen for the volley of gunfire to erupt and race to the area in the hopes of getting some last-minute action. But by the time I could reach the group, the action was always over, leaving me with nothing to film but the bikers standing over the dead carcasses, excitedly recounting every detail.
We've got 44 from 83 we've seen, so we're running about 50%, which is normal. We picked up a mob yesterday afternoon, similar sort of country, a little bit more open, but we had sort of 7 pigs the size of the biggest ones of these, and I think we let 2 get away. They jumped the board drain and we couldn't go in all directions at once chasing them as they scattered apart, but we got 7 good ones yesterday. We've got 4 more sessions to go. We're slowly working the place out. We're shooting on a couple of properties we really haven't been on before, so we're doing a lot of sort of discovery work as well as hunting. This particular place here we've known before, so that's why we're getting a few mobs of pigs here. But we've got a few other places to search yet. We might find a few more good areas, but the place is very dry at the moment, a lot drier than it was last year, so the pigs have moved away a little bit with the rain. So there's a fair few like this, sort of smaller ones, young adults, but the real big ones have taken a flogging. The professionals and people like us are sort of giving them a hard time. The pigs really don't get much of a chance to get any age anymore, but we've got 4 more sessions yet, so we should end up with about 80 or 90 by the time we're finished.
I was too scared, or I didn't have enough time or reflexes to to cock the gun, so all I could do was push the barrel in his face, and he just kept going about 20 yards further behind me. I turned around and hit him up the backside. That was enough to slow him down, and the next one got him halfway up the back and came through here. That's where it came through. That was the final shot. He's not a giant because he just doesn't seem to have any teeth. He's got no bottom jaw at all about him.
Well, it's this one, and it loops out and comes into that one you go through. But it comes out a bit and bridges out, and one runs out. And if you keep going that way, you run into another, across an open bit, and there's another bore drain comes across you. And we're picking them up there.
If we come out there, it's just that it's shorter to come home. 21 k's to come home back there.
I mean, at least you've got a few bits of cover on the ground that they can hide in. There's nothing up there.
This is pretty open compared to what's on the other side.
The other country's better than that.
Left behind. No net, we're off to go. Beagle Valley.
Every time I looked at the bikers with their dust-covered faces and wind-spiked hair, weapons slung helter-skelter across both shoulders, and chests girdled bandito style with huge 50-round ammunition belts, I could not help but imagine I was filming an episode right out of a Mad Max movie. The men I was seeing and filming, however, were not actors. They were a group of hunters just as you might find here in the U.S., with the exception these guys probably see and kill more pigs in 1 week than most U.S. hunters will see or kill in a lifetime. The ammunition belts and other equipment is far from show. Each piece has been carefully chosen after years of experience and hard knocks. The time was not a total waste, however, for the barren-looking surroundings held many scenic wonders for a South Georgia visitor like myself. After miles and miles of walking through the dry Outback, our luck finally changed when Darren located a broken drain ditch which had spilled water onto the surrounding bush, bringing life to the otherwise dead zone. After an afternoon of scouting, Darren, Carl, and myself returned at first daybreak to stake out the area. We were not the only ones to locate the wet ground, and it did not take long for an encounter between the hunter and the hunted.
There was quite a few in that mob. There's probably, I thought there was about 4 when I first seen them, but there was probably 4 that ran. They scattered. Some had gone that way towards Darren. Hopefully he might pick them up, and the others cut across this way. Well, we're on the board. I'll pull these out in the clear and we can get a good look at them. But you can see they've been living here for quite some time. There's little places, that particular tree back there, I said they're holed up under the tree. Do you see how it was all tramped out and depressed underneath the tree roots? They'd been camped there for a while. You usually find that if you're in an area where the dominant boar is black and white, they throw a lot of black and white. Mainly they're black. There was a couple of pure black fellas run with that lot, but there was also a few more black and white ones that went back over here towards Darren too. Keep just beside that boar drain. I don't know whether that boar drain swings away or not. We'll just keep zigzagging backwards and forwards and pick it up.
Not more than 5 minutes after Call's encounter with the small herd, we heard a sharp report from Darren's 243. Call immediately pointed out to me that Darren must have slipped up on a lone boar, seeing there was only 1 shot fired. A few minutes later, we were up on Darren, and surprising to me, Darren had slipped up on a huge boar which had been resting underneath a eucalyptus tree, avoiding the late morning heat.
Got this beauty this morning, just a while ago. I was just walking through this open country here and happened to look across, and here he was just laying on the ground out from that. And I thought, funny to have a black log at right angles to the white one, and when I threw up in the scope all I could see was a big ear and an eye looking back at me, and nearly peed my pants. But I thought he was asleep, so I got a bit of my home video of him, and then I snuck in and shot him.
Look at the countryside he's in.
He's turned out to be a beauty. Very, very solid in the guts. Real long hair. I think he's a pretty old pig. And he's got a little bit of ivory too. For this area, that's pretty good.
God, he's got some weight.
He's hit you at speed, he'd kill you. Yeah, we've pulled him out of his little lair behind me and propped him up. But yeah, he's a really good find to catch asleep so early in the morning. It just proves that these big fellas really are nocturnal. They're not far after sunup and he's already camped for the day. Normally this area, pigs this big sort of don't produce tusks. I mean, they're not a tremendous set, but they're easily the best set we've seen in 2 trips to this area. So we'll probably take them home as a trophy set. And hard compact mud on his nose indicates he's been wallowing. So he's been using either the dam just nearby or the boar drain. Any good boars we get, we normally measure their length and their girth. We just put them in like a kill register with date, place, time, and just to see which area produces the bigger boars, or whether it's due to good seasons or not. Being such a good one from this area, we'll put a tape on him. Usually it just runs straight down the back from the tip of the nose to the butt of the tail, and he's 51 inches long. To do the girth, I'll usually roll him on his side. I suppose we can do that. And just take a halfway measurement and double it rather than trying to wrap it right around his whole body. He goes 24, so he's 48 48 around the girth, which puts him in the pretty good category. We haven't got too many that are really bigger. The best we've ever seen is 60 inches long and 60 inches around. He's just like a walking keg. I wasn't trying to actually hit him in the head, but just behind the ear, like, and pretty close. But it surprised me that it went right through, but he never moved, thank God. No, at least I shoot straight when the animal's a pig. Can't eat anything else for want of trying.
Ready to go?
Yep, just rolling back a bit. We mount our trophies this way. Instead of removing the tusks from the jaw, we usually just saw through the jawbone and take the whole jawbone. Yep. That's one powerful, thick jawbone. Got him. Shane O'Malley, the owner of the property we're staying on, was saying that there's a top price now on pigs, 100k and over, of $1 a kilo, and then a $10 bounty for each pig, which means that probably a good boar this size, I'd say he'd go 100 kilos. So we're probably leaving $100 worth of meat here, which would have paid for our fuel. But the big problem is you've got a limited time once you shoot them professionally to get them to the chillers. And we're just too far away from the chiller to get him there anyway. They would have took him very freely because he's only been shot in the head, and that was a stipulation of the professional pig shooters, that their animals are shot in the head and they're just gutted, and you must leave the heart, liver, lungs inside the animal so that the meat inspectors can check them out for various types of diseases before they're marketed. But I'd say the chiller would only be too pleased to have half a dozen of those hanging in it. He's a real good pig. For this area, you may not get them any bigger than that. Probably into the mountains where we're going later, you'll get the odd big boar that will go bigger than this fella. So we could end up with some good trophies later on when we get back to the mountains.
Though Darren scored 2 more times during the first segment of our hunt, I always seemed to be in the wrong place. Cole brought me good luck once more, however, and we were able to slip up on a sow and 2 pigs that were feeding late in the afternoon.
Still back there, one of them.
Well, I know it's not very sporting to some people to be shooting pigs this size, but it's an agreement with the property owners out here that if you go on their property to shoot pigs, you don't differentiate between sizes of pigs. You shoot all the pigs you see. If you don't, as some people do, they pick out the bigger pigs that they can market and they leave the little guys to grow up. And this is not what the property owners want. These little fellas get through as much food as a sheep or a lamb, and they want to get rid of the pigs, not only for the amount of food that they eat, but the diseases and things that they transmit to their cattle and sheep. So that's the going agreement. You come on their property, you shoot every pig you see, irrespective of the size. And if you prove that you don't shoot them like this, the next time you come back they don't let you on. They'll run a poison program, and they know that they kill everything. So they insist that we kill everything as well. But if all the pigs we shot were this size, you'd enjoy it a lot more. And not a lot of joy shooting small pigs like this. But you've got to do the right thing by the property owner, or you just don't get on next time you come. So I hope we can venture on while we've still got a bit of daylight and maybe catch some more.
By now, you're probably asking yourself exactly how many is 12 million pigs. To put it in perspective, we need to compare the land mass of the continental United States to that of Australia. When most people think of Australia, or they look at it on a map, they think, well, that's a pretty good sized little island down there. In actuality, if you were to take Australia and superimpose it over the continental United States, you'd find out they are very close in size. The big difference, of course, is the number of people that live in the United States and the ones that live in Australia. The United States, their estimates are up around 250 million people. Australia, on the other hand, is inhabited by only some 17 million people. The other big factor is the number of wild pigs. In the United States, experts believe there might be somewhere between 500,000 and 2 million pigs. In Australia, experts believe that this island continent is inhabited by some 9 to 20 million wild pigs. It doesn't take long to figure it out. 250 million people, even if the upward estimate of 2 million pigs. Australia, 17 million people, upper estimate, 20 million pigs. If those numbers were used, pigs actually outnumber humans on the great island of Australia. By now, you're probably thinking what I am. I've labeled this place Pig Heaven. No doubt, there's pigs scattered throughout that continent island, and there's not many hunters to hunt them. So, it doesn't take you long to figure out that these numbers these guys come up with of 100 to 120 pigs a hunt are not that unbelievable any longer. Darren and Carl Shelley are just a few of the Australians who have gotten the pig fever, and believe me, they've got it in a bad way. The first segment of our hunt, the footage you have just seen, was shot in what I can best describe as the outer limits of the Great Outback. We reached the area by driving west from the coast over the Great Dividing Range, the range of mountains which run the entire east coast of Australia, and on westward to the border of Queensland and New South Wales, where we set up camp in the old shearers' quarters. The Outback was in many ways what I had expected, remote, dry, and sparsely populated. The area was dotted with little towns and pubs which quickly thinned the further west we went. The only thing that really puzzled me was how in the world pigs, cattle, and sheep managed to live off of the desolate surroundings. Heck, I was even having a hard time figuring out how humans managed to live on the land. Nighttime provided a whole different picture, however, and quickly became one of my favorite times. I looked forward to climbing into the back of Carl's 4x4 and driving off into the cool night air, where we would stay out till early morning, shining for pigs, foxes, rabbits, and cats. It was as if everything had been hiding under rocks during the day, just waiting for the sun to set and the air to cool, so they could venture out for water and food. Not only does this provide the group of hunters an extra opportunity to down a few more pigs, but it also provides them with excellent opportunities to shoot other non-native species which the government views as unwanted invaders of the continent, foxes, rabbits, and cats, all of which have been brought to the country from overseas and targeted by the government for total eradication.
You can see the other one just coming into the light.
Now it's good. He's having a scratch.
Yeah, he's
Scratching his back leg at the moment.
He's grubbing in the dirt there with his nose. You can see him rocking his body backwards and forwards. He's coming out the road.
That's a bigger pig, you know.
Still having a nose around.
Is that a rolling whenever you want?
I haven't got a rest, but we will do.
He's hit. Here he comes. He's coming to us.
Keep the light on him, Cole.
Yeah.
I'm getting all this.
He's gone down.
He's down.
Legs in
This is a big boar we've just had to come round the canal to find. Cole just shot him twice. I didn't think he was going to stand there, so I didn't bother with the video, otherwise I'd have got some really spectacular stuff at close range. I'll give him the official measure. Where'd he go? Oh, when they roll him over, he is a lot bigger than he looks. He looked really big just standing in the reeds, straight opposite the channel. Looked good rolled over then. I assume that's heavy, Cole.
Can't lift him on the arm.
Put him back down right way up again.
They look big in the spotlight, they are.
You don't think you've put one on him yet?
Australia's most recognized animal, the kangaroo, numbers into the tens of millions and must be continuously culled in order to control their numbers. Approximately 3 million roo are culled each year legally, with possibly the same number killed by hunters for sport and farmers attempting to keep the animals off of their crops and pastures. All of the roo taken during our visit were culled using permits issued to the individual ranches. The legal taking of roos and wild boar by professional hunters brings millions upon millions of dollars to the Australian economy. The roo and boar are usually shot at night with spotlights and immediately dropped off at cold boxes that are strategically located throughout the vast outback. Large refrigerated trucks running routes down the dusty roads pick the animals up from the portable cooler locations and transports the game to the processing plants located on the east coast. The processing plants, in turn, grind the majority of roo into cat and dog food and ship the boar meat to Europe and Asia, where it brings top dollar as wild game meat. The second portion of our hunt took us back to the mountain ranges of the Great Dividing Range, which we had crossed on our trip out. Paul, his son Shay, and Bruce left the hunt at this point and returned home, while Cole, Darren, Steve, and myself headed back east to the mountain location. Once again, we set up in sheep shearers' quarters located on the ranch where we would be hunting. I felt a little more comfortable in the mountains, which reminded me of the Montana foothills. At a distance, I could hardly tell the difference, but up close it became quite obvious that the plant and wildlife was not of any origins I was used to. It did not take long for us to throw our gear into the old barn that doubled as the shearers' quarters during the sheep shearing time, and head towards the top of the mountain for a quick late afternoon hunt. I was paired up with Steve, who would leave his bike on the trailer for the mountain hunt, and we quickly took off on foot across the mountains in search of pigs. No more than 30 minutes after leaving the truck, we spotted a small herd of pigs rooting their way across the adjoining ridge.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can't see the spotty one anymore. There he is. They should be moving into this dam. We've got a few sheep between us, but
Which way are you going to go?
we've got to keep downwind. We'll have to go down in this gully, but we've got to watch them sheep. We may have to let them come past the sheep before we make our move. I don't know how we got away with that. A lot of the sheep are losing interest in us.
How many pigs do you count over there?
It's about 8. Most of them are now behind the tree, but they're only probably 5, 6 months old. It looks like the whole same litter, they're all identical. I think we'll just wait 5 minutes to see which way they go. I think we'll cut back down here, go along and come up under that fallen log. We'll stop there.
Okay, go ahead.
We'll have to backtrack a little bit back here so they can't see us. I'll have to stay up high to clear the fence. No, he's in the middle. Come on. Oh, Jesus, come on, stop. I think one's coming up. Yeah, go ahead anytime you want. I'll wait till I get out in the open so you can see it. I want the bigger one. If the big one comes out, he gets it. It'll be the lead pig. Come on. A little further. He's being hidden. They beat me. It was just the two, wasn't it?
Yeah, let's go down and take a look.
Okay, I'll see if I can collect some of this brass first. What, did it run out on you halfway through? Okay. We've come on this mob of about 8 smallish ones, but we've got a few hours of light left, so, we've got half an hour I suppose. So we'll nick off over the hill and see if we can get some more before we have to run back to the car. We usually take about 14, 15 in a couple of days here, so we're off to a good start. There's plenty of sign and we don't usually catch them down here in this area, so hopefully there'll be quite a lot of pigs this trip. Okay, we'll go.
The next day seemed to be a repeat of our first hunt, with me following the wrong hunter. As with the first hunt, Darren ventured out and took a nice boar just before nightfall, and as before, he was able to get some footage with his home video before taking the lone boar. Early the next morning, Steve and myself met Darren at the remote site.
This is the boar I managed to get last night, while the other fellows were down the other end of the property. And he's just come over the hill behind us. There's a river, and I sat on the hill all afternoon and saw nothing, and just as I was leaving I decided to look down to the river and I saw him feeding. I didn't think he was as big as this, and I followed him with our video camera, and he come over the little ridge and down to a little dam for a drink just alongside us. And I lost him in the tall grass here for a little while, and then kangaroos spooked him and he ran up the side of this hill, just enough to give me a clear shot. It looks like it's come in up his back and travelled right through. Doesn't seem to have come out the front. And that was enough to hold him, but it was almost too dark by then. For some reason it is quite common, almost a totally black pig, but there'll be white on them somewhere, and it's usually just the bottom half of each foot. No. Although this one's got black feet at the back and white ones at the front. It must be just the domestic strain being bred through them. And I'd imagine he'd throw mostly black young, but occasionally the white ones to keep the coloured pigs turning up in the population all the time. Every indication shows that he's just a young pig. Doesn't seem to have much age. The hair's not very long. Ears are intact, there's not a mark on them. I don't think he's been fighting. Teeth aren't worn and they're not real wide, these molars, which is usually a good giveaway of an old pig. I think he's just reached a good size and marked his own territory out, and he just made a big mistake. He hasn't really got a heavy fighting shield. It's sort of just formed, but it's not compacted or totally solid like an old pig would have.
Seem to be able to pick it up when we've been setting traps in a way.
Darren managed to take another nice boar as the animal approached a small watering hole that Darren had staked out. The kill was achieved in almost total darkness as the loner cautiously approached the hole for much needed water. Though the two hunts were a total success in American standards, the Australians continuously apologized for the low numbers, insisting to show me their home footage and photographs as proof that they had not exaggerated their past numbers to me. I needed no convincing. I was totally satisfied and had to accept the drought for what it was. There are no guarantees when hunting wild game. Hunters must tend with many factors totally beyond their control. I simply felt privileged to have been invited by the Aussies to tag along with them as they pursued wild pigs in their country. The entire group made my trip one of the most memorable I am sure I will ever have. I found the group polite and sincere. Everyone was consumed in making sure I got the footage I needed. The interesting thing is that some 2 months later, while putting this video together, it was not necessarily the kill scenes I remembered most, but rather the time spent around the fires discussing the hunts and the beautiful scenery encountered while following the hunters.
Walking across the river or one of the canals. Interesting boat. You didn't watch the crocodile show that I put on last, did you? No, we didn't have a look at it.
Clouds are made of water vapour.
Okay.
Water's heavier than air. Why don't they fall down?
They're a gas, which of all the other gases.
So that's like just steam.
Yeah,
Pretty close to it.
Fall on the go. Yeah. Go on now, is it?
Yeah.
No, no, he's
You got your finger on the road. Yeah, that's it.
great journey took us to the extreme northeastern coast of Australia, into the interior of the tropical Cape York Peninsula, which lies just beneath Papua New Guinea. The purpose of the trip was to follow Jim Mitchell and Graham Hardwick of Australia's Department of Lands and Protection as they did research in an area that contains probably the heaviest concentration of wild pigs anywhere in Australia. Jim Mitchell is considered by many the foremost expert on wild pigs in Australia. Though we would be located in the subtropical interior of the peninsula, we would first have to travel through much of the famous tropical rainforest of Australia, where we faced many natural obstacles, such as this river which had swollen from heavy rains further south, forcing us to drive back up the coast to use a different road. Our trip through the tropics introduced me to wildlife and locations which had previously only been seen by me on television. As soon as we reached the subtropical area where the pigs were supposed to be, I saw several lone boars paralleling our vehicle in the tall grass, as if challenging the vehicle's presence. It was only after getting out on foot, however, that I was finally able to get footage of the pigs as they fed off of the thousands of water lilies which had overtaken most of the shallow lakes in the area. Jim Mitchell was right. The area was full of pigs, many of which probably had never seen a human before. All seemed to challenge our presence. One became so aggressive, I was forced to abandon my video equipment, but then managed to snap off 2 additional shots with my 35mm camera before having to retreat to a nearby tree. The area held many trophies, but designated as a natural park, the Australian government allows no hunting, so I settled with capturing the dangerous beast on video. Before I knew it, I found myself back in Sydney where our expedition had started and where I would get a good night's rest before catching a plane the next morning for the long trip back to the United States. The long ride gave me a lot of time to think of my travels in Australia's great outback and tropical rainforest. Stepping off the plane back to the United States, however, seemed to wipe away the month's journey, leaving me with only fond memories, videotape, and photographs of the expedition to the land down under. We hope you enjoyed our production, Doing It Down Under, and invite you to stay till after the credits in order to preview some of our other titles. Oh yes, in case you've been wondering what this is that I've had in my lap and up against the map earlier, it's called a didgeridoo. It's simply a tree trunk which has been hollowed out from the end to the bottom by termites and that the Australian Aborigines use as a musical instrument. We'd like to personally thank Peter Kay of Australia, who kindly allowed us to use selections from his 2 audio cassettes on playing the didgeridoo, which we used as background music on much of the production on Australia. The first major production from the new producer. This was the video many described as not only one of the best videos ever on wild boar, but as one of the best hunting tapes they had seen. The video looks at the origins of the wild pigs which roam throughout many parts of the United States. In addition, viewers would go along on exciting hunts in the heartland of wild pig country in North America, deep in the old south of Florida and Georgia. You'll be introduced to the sport of hunting pigs with dogs, as well as stalking the dangerous beast with a traditional longbow. While documenting a dog hunt deep within the huge cypress swamps of South Georgia, the producer captured the fury and danger of a wild boar as his razor-sharp tusk ripped into the arm of a dog handler, requiring the handler's son to use their supply of stitching material, usually reserved for their dogs, to stitch up the nasty wound before continuing on the hunt. During one of the longbow hunts, you'll see one of the largest boars ever taken on film fall victim to the power of the longbow and handmade wooden arrows. A wonderful production full of information, excitement, and beauty of the great outdoors. A true hunting classic. Seizing upon the opportunity to film a documentary on his lifelong hero, the producer spent over a year from outdoor productions in order to work on The Strongest Man in Recorded History, the life story of American lifter Paul Anderson, who was born in Toccoa, Georgia in 1932. After only some 3 years of training in his backyard, using homemade weights made of concrete and iron, and at 20 years of age, the young Georgian began smashing records that had taken others dozens of years to achieve. 3 years later, in 1955, Anderson was known throughout the world as the strongest man on earth after devastating his competitors at home and abroad with such ease, most were left awestruck. Today, many in the sport believe Anderson is the strongest man ever. And in February of 1992, at the first USA Power and Strength Symposium, Anderson was recognized as the strongest man of the century. The documentary is full of old photographs and newsreels of the man who in his prime stood 5 feet 9 inches tall with a 24-inch neck, 58-inch chest, massive 36-inch thighs, and weighed a solid 340 pounds. Today, Anderson can be found in his youth home in Georgia, which he founded in 1960 after winning an Olympic gold medal in Melbourne, Australia in the heavyweight lifting competition. Anderson remains the last American heavyweight lifter to win a gold medal for the United States. Anderson's unselfish dedication over the last 30 years to his home and the thousands of youths who have passed through the home's doors has given the young men a second chance in life. Paul Anderson is a true American hero who is living proof that one man can make a difference. Stephen Duncan of Muscular Training Systems in California wrote, "I can say with all honesty that this is the most inspirational film I have ever seen. Not only was I spellbound by Anderson's physical prowess, but also his testimony. Several times I actually had a tear in my eye from the story." Osmo Kia, the Iron Master newsletter of Kearns, Utah, wrote, "I believe this is the finest tape ever made of an Iron Game personality." William Henburn, foremost collector and dealer of physical cultural memorabilia in Farmington, Michigan, wrote, "A top-notch job. I've seen virtually every film on weightlifting and bodybuilding personalities. Yours is tops." Fan Rick Ayer of Barnesville, Georgia wrote, "I must tell you that I cried while watching the video. A moving documentary for the whole family."